Hi, I wanted to take a moment to ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. And one of the main reasons why we do this work is to bring the ideas of compassion and wisdom to the forefront to as many people as we can so that we can create more healing in this world. And it really does help the algorithm, which helps us get the message out there of, that for people who are struggling with betrayal, there are ways to heal. For people who are struggling with addiction, there are ways to heal. So thank you so much. So, Brandy, I just want to say thank you so much for coming all the way over here to do this. I know you're extremely busy and have a lot going on. If you don't mind, just for the audience, could you just kind of tell us who you are, what brought you to do this kind of work?
Absolutely. First off, thank you for inviting me. I'm super excited, and I was like, oh, fun experience. Never had it. Let's do it. But I am an APCC, so I just hit, today's the first. I graduated 2 years ago. Guess who could sit for their clinicals?
Oh.
I can now.
So APCC, just what is that?
Associate Professional License Counselor, or Clinical Counselor. So I'll be an LPCC once I finish my clinical hours, which are done, and then do my clinical exams. So
awesome.
Really excited.
So sorry to keep interrupting, but the associate kind of means that and license, like, so you're working on getting your license, you're like taking a test from the state, doing all of that kind of stuff.
So, I'm under supervision. So I've, done about 3,500 hours under supervision with mixed populations, anywhere from ages 3 to 74, I think is my oldest client. So, along with that, I've been working with getting my registered play therapist certification. So I do play therapy, different kind of models, child-centered. I do a little bit of prescriptive play therapy as well. But I've also been working with betrayed partners and coupleships and diverse relationships. So a lot of work there as well.
Yeah, awesome. And today we're mainly going to be talking about that part, what you were just talking about, betrayed partners, coupleships, things like that. And I noticed when I was doing the research for this interview, one of the things I looked at was your profile in Psychology Today. And, I just want to read, if it's okay, this one section here, because I just thought it was really absolutely beautifully written. Yeah, so it was actually the section that I wanted to read, which I think is just so beautiful, and I'll just read it right here. It's sometimes healing looks like laughter, sometimes like paint splatters, and sometimes like quiet reflection, but always in a space where your story is honored and your resilience has room to grow. And that just struck me, because I think when you read a lot of information from therapists or profiles or anything, they're talking only about like how they can help the client, but they don't talk about their commitment, if that makes sense. So, their reference point is more about like, this is the work, we'll do this, versus like, I am making a commitment to you. And so I just wanted to explore that a little bit with you, if that's okay.
I think actually that's pretty on brand and on topic for, kind of how we're talking today. There's an intimacy that's between a therapist and their client, and that's, wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard, wanting to have space for the story, right? Now, it's not that reciprocal relationship of intimacy, say, as in like, a couple or, multiple relationships, but it is that space where you're able to be safe and secure and have the autonomy to like share parts of your story. And I think that that really embodies intimacy, and being able to laugh with someone and being able to have that authenticity is, you
Yeah.
know, when you walk in and there's a therapist and they're nervous, or not the therapist. I mean, I'm always the nervous therapist, but but having a client walk in and be nervous to share all of these nooks and crannies, the nitty gritty of who they are, and in a way that honors their story and doesn't feel judgmental. There's that commitment that should be there of, I'm not just doing this to try to fix you, but I'm doing this because I'm truly invested in healing,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah.
And, and I imagine that sense of fear and that, that is like tremendously amplified for betrayed partners or for relationships.
Yeah, it can be truly amplified. I mean, they've just had, one of the things that they probably would categorize as one of the worst things that's ever happened. And they're in a vulnerable spot, and they're spiraling, and they're trying to understand the chaos that they're currently in. So yeah, very vulnerable spot. Um, and then sometimes, they're choosing to stay in a relationship that societal norms would tell them, what are you doing, right? But they want to have that healing experience, for sure.
Yeah. So what, keeping in mind the YouTube algorithm as we talk, what what usually brings a coupleship in to see you at Mindful Centers?
At Mindful Center. So, problematic sexual behavior, right? Um, Within the community, most notably for the algorithm, like
Hmm.
sex addiction, right? Or porn addiction, love addiction. Um, there's usually what would be considered, that D-Day of discovery, and this is not okay within our relationship, and what are we going to do about it? We're either both going to get help, you're going to get help, or what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Right.
So literally like a D-Day or discovery would be like a day that a partner walks in and, I don't know, picks up a phone or looks at emails
Right.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes it's finding out that they're communicating with somebody. They just see a flash of the phone and something odd, and their spidey senses go and they look, and here we are. How did we get here? And it's very traumatic for them,
Yeah.
to figure out that there's some infidelity, there's some betrayed trust. I don't even want to say some, that I'm completely betrayed in this moment. And sometimes it's even feeling that they've betrayed themselves.
Yeah. And it's so interesting now with the digital age, right? Because I remember when I was a kid and my dad, my biological dad, not my stepdad, he had an affair behind my stepmom back for like 6 years. And the story was so atrocious because the affair partner showed up on their front porch with hefty bags with cards and pictures and all of these other things, which was kind of unheard of back then to have all of that documentation of these past events.
Yeah,
But
the receipts.
yeah,
The
yeah, right.
receipts, like this is what you've been doing.
Yeah, it was more like a discovery, but a partner wouldn't have like all of these receipts, all of this data. But now, in today's day and age, like a partner discovers and then they can go online to Google and or an AI
Yeah.
and find out everything.
Yeah.
I mean, just catastrophic for a partner.
Absolutely. Very turbulent, a lot of chaos there for the betrayed partner, the family. all that are involved, right? There's essentially a second life or a third life, happening, and it's very traumatic, and unsettling, for the partner, for sure.
So, after a couple has, had this discovery and this huge betrayal and this explosion that's been basically like a nuclear bomb in their relationship, now they're in your office with you, they're sitting there. I mean, how do you even begin? How does anybody even begin to help a coupleship figure out where to go from there?
So for me, when they're physically in my office, um,
Oh yeah,
we,
because there's virtual now
yeah,
too,
I'm
right?
like,
Yeah.
it's always interesting to see the dynamic as they come in, what we're, approaching, right? Some of them that are online, are they in this, when they, when I always come with curiosity, of course, our first goal is always stabilization, and how can we not damage the relationship more than it already has been, right? Um, there will be two people on Zoom in two different places. Like they don't even want to be in the same
Same room.
space
Yeah.
with each other, that's understandable. It's hard. If they're physically in my office, it's about safety and stabilization, as well as, online. What do you need to feel safe in this moment with me as a, person who's going to be guiding you on this journey? And in office, I usually like to start with, hey, tell me about, the feelings you're currently having. What are your needs in this moment? I'm a big believer in Thanos check-ins. So feelings, affirmations.
Feelings, affirmations.
Feelings, affirmations, needs, ownership, sobriety, and struggles, right?
Okay.
Where are we at with just being able to check in and not have to go back and forth, right? Just being able to have your own individual space for being able to express what you're feeling, right? A lot of times those feelings, just being able to get them out there, is a big part of that first session, in a respectful way.
Yeah, that's probably the hard part, right? In a respectful way, because I can
Yeah.
imagine if I discovered, like, I would be,
Yeah.
it would be hard not to
Right. I don't even like
let
people
some
pulling
words
out
fly.
in front of me. But,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, it's always hard to train yourself, through this process of being able to take that betrayal, trauma, anger. And Dr. Hollenbeck, her book is great. It's on betrayal, trauma, anger. And she basically says, you have every right to be angry, but this is still your partner. And what you do with that anger is really important. And even working with children, and anger. We often have kids that come in and they want to beat the bot bag, right? They want to express that anger in some way. Yeah, we can express anger in a way that's respectful and honors our relationship and honors our partner. And I know I'm saying honor when we're talking about this big catastrophic, you did this to me. But, there is that space, that part of you that, still loves your partner. You feel betrayed, you feel angry, but how are we going to work through this together as a team? Because I always say a relationship is a team, right?
Yeah.
It's a team sport. And you didn't really ask to have this game right now, this team sport thing that's going on. But, in order to heal, it's going to take everyone in the relationship. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you had, is that, if they're going to work through this, like, they need to find a way to be a team against the addiction and the betrayal, versus the addiction being being in the middle of them in a way that creates enemies of the two people that want to find a way to love each other in a more skillful, less abusive way.
Right. It is hard to find that ground, that empathy going both ways, right?
Yeah.
The partner being empathetic. It's hard to imagine, hey, I need to be empathetic towards you. And it's like, I'm not in that place yet, right? And then you've got someone that's having these behaviors that are problematic for the relationship. And how do I heal, but at the same time have empathy for the fact that you're, having to take the helm of the household, and now I've hurt you, and I need to figure out how to help you have trust in me and trust in our relationship again. And, there's a lot of empathy that needs to be had in order to have healing.
Yeah.
Right. But it's hard to be on the outside and go, oh, yeah, I need to have empathy for you. That's the first thing I want to do right now. So there's a lot of work that goes into healing before you can get to that spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I imagine it would be important then for the couples, each individual in the coupleship, to also kind of have their own therapist, because a lot of times, like, oh, hey, we need to come together. We need you to come together as a team in this marriage. And especially for a partner who's like, what do you mean a team? Like, this is clearly not been a team thing. So they would need kind of this space, a separate space to kind of.
Yeah. I talk in a lot of analogies a lot of times, because some people, reflect on the analogies, the metaphors, and go, oh yeah, I get what you're saying. But, when a partner comes in and hears team sport, what do you mean? I was like on the bench when, all of this activity and team sport was happening. I thought I was on a different team.
Yeah.
And here you are, you were betting against us, kind of like that. And, that hits home for both, the betrayer and the betrayed, because we were playing two different games.
Yeah.
And there's that reality, that breakthrough of denial, and, having a sense of, yeah, this is what's going on right now. But working as a team is definitely something that has to happen.
Yeah.
And that's stabilizing your family. That's understanding, how do we pivot, and with a whole lot of hurt and chaos going on, and a different reality.
Yeah. And a lot of, different reality, a lot of maybe even unfairness, right? Because if the addict's like having to go, or the betrayer, or the addict, the person who betrayed, right? If they have to go to some sort of treatment program and that's taking up all their time, or they have to leave the house, now the betrayed partner is not just dealing with the trauma, but now they're managing the house by themselves, managing the kids, managing all of that.
Yeah. When I'm working with partners, I do address that. Like, as a play therapist, outside of working with betrayed partners, I do parent collaterals. And here we're playing on the same team. We've got to do what's best for this. And in this scenario, there's a family, possibly. There's possibly kids. And there's the relationship. How do we honor the relationship and also stabilize that, right?
Yeah.
But there is that unfair feeling of, I didn't consent to this. I didn't consent to this life. I didn't know this was going on. And now you're telling me I need to do a whole bunch of work when this was your decision. This was your bad decisions. And here we are. And I have to pick up the slack while treatment is going on, or, other things.
Yeah. And so when a couple come into your office, and they've been doing some work for a while, how, like, when they start to ask, like, the question of, we want to get intimacy back, we want to figure out how to trust again, or these types of things. What do you make up they're actually, or maybe not make up, but in most contexts, what are they actually asking for? Do you know what I mean? Like, they're coming in, they're like, oh, we want to get back to intimacy again. But what are they is that really what they're looking for? I mean, I'll take the whole phrase intimacy again, and we'll put that aside, because we could talk about, that could be a whole nother podcast about how there wasn't really ever intimacy because one person was lying the whole time. Yeah. But yeah, so what are they, like, what are they actually seeking when they ask for increased intimacy again, or to get back to the intimacy again?
Well, that's a good question, because I don't know.
Yeah.
They come in, I can make a million guesses on what it meant for them to be intimate pre-discovery, or pre-infidelity, or whatever the situation is, where I could go back into that curiosity, right? That walking alongside of them. Well, let's explore, because what is intimacy to you? What is intimacy to your partner? What is intimacy? I can give my own definition, right? And a lot of times when we're talking betrayed partner and infidelity, you've got the betrayer who's been possibly engaging in, not healthy sexuality. And then you've got the betrayed partner who is not safe and not stable. But if they've been doing some work and they're getting to that point, they want to ask that question. It's important that we're all talking about the same game, right? We're all talking about this partner could be talking about, hey, when are we gonna have intimate touch?
Yeah.
And the other one is, I want to feel safe. And where is my emotional intimacy and intimacy that involves safety? So I think it's really important to identify that first. Like, what is our goal? Because if your goal is to just initiate, healthy sexuality, that's great. But we have to go back to that original courtship of, getting to know each other, trust building, and all those aspects that go into intimacy.
Yeah, and I love what you just said, getting to know each other, because for the partner, right? I mean, even, well, not just for the partner, for the person who betrayed too. Like, a lot of the therapy, I imagine, is just about both of them. The person who, was acting out, we'll just use in an unhealthy sexual way, we'll just say, somebody who's struggling in unhealthy sexual behaviors as our example. Like, they're getting to know themselves for the first time after discovery, but the partner is getting to know them for the first time. So a lot of the work then for your couples therapy is about, at least I'm making up, maybe about like helping them go through that process of getting to know all over again, while also managing the idea from that, well, we should have already known, like the betrayed partner should have already known who the betrayer was, and the betrayer should have already known who they were themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What I'm trying to kind of visualize what you're saying is, the betrayed partner is like, well, I had this life, I thought I knew you, and I was my authentic self, and now, we have to start over, right? Yeah. But you knew the authentic me, now I want to know the authentic you. I believe as we go through that whole relationship escalator, we date, we couple up, we get engaged, we get married. There's not, what I've noticed, a lot of communication on what our relationship really looks like. What is our relationship culture? And then you get problematic sexual behaviors in there. And was our culture really that culture? Or was it something else?
Completely different. Yeah. And you brought up authentic self, which is so important, because if we continue to use somebody who struggles with problematic sexual behaviors, then they've more often than not surrendered, authenticity for attachment. And so, right, so they don't even know what it's like to be an authentically attached person in a relationship. And then the partner who was authentic with them is like,
Possibly authentic.
well, hopefully authentic, right?
We're
Yeah.
hoping authentic, right?
Good
There
point.
may be attachment needs there too that,
Yeah.
but to your point of, um, a lot of times the betrayer is sacrificing, and it sounds odd to say it, sacrificing their own needs and then going and meeting them somewhere else. As far as the attachment ones are concerned, that's like secure base of being able to go out and explore, and then that safe haven coming back, that circle of security, right? That is supposed to be initiated in childhood and fostered, and sometimes that doesn't happen, and then we go and meet our own needs, and then we get into that addictive cycle or problematic behaviors.
Yeah. And that, right? I mean, that in itself is like, that's the work that
self-knowledge.
yeah, that's the work that the betrayer or the person who's struggling with sex addiction, or right, however we want to call it, that's the work they have to do.
Right.
And sometimes what I hear you kind of saying is, sometimes when they do that work, they might come back to the relationship and say, this doesn't work for me anymore.
Right.
And then the partner's like, wait a minute, not only did you betray me, not only did you lie to me, but now you're telling me that what I asked from you is not okay. That is like, that must go over real well.
So that goes, goes into the next phase of like, autonomy versus safety, right? Then it's a question of what is the best for the relationship, right? Or I like to say, when I get to building rapport with, a dynamic, who owns the relationship now? Is it both of you that owns the relationship, or are we going to continue on this path of, once there's repair done, do we not necessarily start over, but do we start in a place where both of us can be autonomous, both of us can explore, both of us can have that safety and that laughter and that, because one partner is very hurt and needs that security and that safety, and one partner is like, I'm exploring myself now. I'm learning what it really means to live authentically, and I need that safety too.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because you brought this idea of like, it might be starting over, but in some ways it's not. And I think we were talking beforehand about, what was her name? Ellis Pearl?
Oh, Esther Pearl.
Esther Pearl, yeah. And I know one of the things that she says to couples is, the relationship you had is over. The question is do you want to start a new one? And although I think that's in so many ways true, it's also like the memories are still there. Like they still have those positive reinforcements that happened throughout the relationship prior. So do we want to erase all of that? I think. Well,
that's an interesting question. Do we want to erase all those memories? No. But for the betrayed partner, they find out so many things about what they thought their relationship was. And it's interesting to do the work of, you still have all those good memories, even though you have now information that says, oh, that wasn't the same experience he was having or she was having.
Yeah. And again, inauthentic.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't authentic.
Your experience was authentic. You were having this experience. The brain is a funny thing, right? You and I could be having the same exact experience right now, but chances are might not. I mean, my palms are all sweaty. You're probably a pro at this, and we can still agree that it's a good time, right? But if there was, I don't know, some ulterior motive for you and hidden camera, and we're going to have a completely different experience later. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you betrayed me. I mean, did I still have fun? Yeah, but now I'm going to question that experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So the betray partner questions the experiences that they had. So going back to your question of are we going to get rid of all the bad or the good times? The betrayed partner could question of, well, did all those good
does it
times
even
actually
happen?
happen?
Yeah,
And so going back to, yeah, we're
we're
not
starting
necessarily
over.
starting over. There's some rapport we've built, but some of that
But
rapport has been really damaged.
yeah,
But getting to know each other again and in the context of how we're showing up in this space now.
yeah, absolutely. What do you think are some of the biggest like barriers to rebuilding the intimacy? Like, so, right, so now our couple has kind of come into your office several
Yeah.
times. They want this intimacy. They're ready to build this new interaction. What ha- what happens then?
Several things. It goes back to what are we defining intimacy as,
Mm,
right? I always encourage clients from the very start. Even if we're at least in the same room, we're going to sit knee to knee, not necessarily trying to initiate. And I ask consent. Hey, are you guys okay? Knee to knee, and doing meditation. You know, intimacy isn't about this all of a sudden spontaneous desire, right? Some people have that spontaneous desire when it comes to sexuality, but we're talking about little gestures throughout your day, little gestures throughout your relationship that built intimacy, right? It built trust, it built desire, it built me being able to come to you vulnerable and authentic and say, hey, I like you and I want to be in your presence.
right.
So basically, building relationship culture. And so from the first appointment, we start building what our relationship culture is going to look like going forward. And if that's, I guess, to take Gottman's like title, if that's fighting better, then we're going to learn how to communicate better.
Yeah.
We're going to learn how to make agreements better. We're going to learn. I don't want to be cliche and go communicate better, but I mean, a lot of times we think we're communicating. I am very wordy, if you can't tell, and I talk a lot. Does that necessarily mean I'm communicating the most efficient? Not always. My partner may not agree that I'm always communicating efficiently. So we're going to learn to hear each other, be in each other's corner, communicate better, and more efficiently to where partner can honor our experience.
Yeah. So kind of, and some of the first steps, right, might even be back to that safety, might be learning to communicate non-violently,
Oh, absolutely.
non-aggressively,
Yeah,
like things
without
like
judgment.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, because that is part of intimacy is being able to know yourself, have a secure attachment to yourself, being able to differentiate. I talk a lot about differentiation.
And just so people could know, what is differentiation?
So differentiation is something I learned in my training I did with Martha Kalpe. I absolutely adored her book, and she would talk about differentiation, knowing yourself, your own beliefs, your own wants and desires, and then being able to communicate that to somebody, and then being able to save space for hearing somebody else's desires and beliefs and emotions and everything. And we don't have to agree, but we do have to agree to save space for each other.
Yeah.
So being able to differentiate from somebody else. So if one partner comes in and says, I need to feel secure and safe, and the other person is defensive, well, because their idea of intimacy is not security and safety. It's,
Right.
I want to get back to where, we used to be.
Right.
So differentiation is going to be, right now we're in two different places. We have beliefs on where we're wanting to be, and or not wanting to be, but where we currently are and how we get to where we want to be. So there's different pathways.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, right? Because that's what people in coupleships will say, right? We want to get back to where, or I want us to get back to where we used to be. But then you're kind of like, well, where you used to be was like filled with lies and dishonesty and inauthenticity. And do you really want to get back there? Like maybe maybe you want to go to a different place, you know?
Yeah.
I say that kind of laughing. It's not a laughing matter. It's horrifically traumatizing. So I don't mean to minimize it, but I think it just speaks to how our mind wants familiarity, wants to just, it's like this seemed safe.
Yeah.
So we want to be here, but in reality that was incredibly unsafe.
Yeah.
And we need to be kind of over here.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because I do hear a lot of, I want us to get back to happy. It's like, oh. Well, this goes back to my point that you were happy. You were, that relationship that you had with your relationship was happy. And now there's this betrayal that went on, and now it's not happy. So how do we build the skills necessary to authentically be happy on both sides?
Yeah, and you know what? I love what you just said, build the skills, because there was a huge study, I think it was done by Harvard, that followed people for, I don't know if it was 25 or 45 years, it was some, and happiness is actually a skill that you build. Like they found that people who expressed 5 things every morning that they were grateful for in their lives they scored 28% happier on the evaluative test than people who didn't do that. And there was all kinds of these examples. And so happiness, even in a relationship, you have to build that skill set, that culture, like you were saying. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things, is building relationship culture. Whether it's with a coworker, or building it with my own partners, or building it with my daughter who loves Legos at 16, and we go
until
to the
she
store.
steps on them.
And no. Like, we don't step on them. She's a pro Lego builder. But that's our culture of, this is what we do, and each relationship has its own unique culture. And being able to foster that and have the skills to foster those connections and foster those little gestures of leaning in and building trust. And
that's where that differentiation comes back, because if you don't have that separate sense of I'm me, you're you, these are my wants, those are your wants, we can't set boundaries. And no boundaries, no safety.
No good boundaries. No good boundaries. No good agreements.
Yeah.
It goes back to who owns the relationship, right? During, that initial repair of when we're doing the, things to build safety in the relationship, at what point do we come together and say, okay, we've done our individual work. We've worked on these skills. I've worked on, moving forward, post-traumatic,
growth,
discovery and everything. And I want to get to that space where we're growing. Well, now it's not going to be all about what I need to feel safe in the relationship. It's going to be what both of us need to feel safe in the relationship. Because we go back to that betrayer. Did they feel safe in the relationship to be their authentic self? Did they feel authentically loved? And, with that attachment issue, what are the chances that was happening?
Yeah, right. And that's probably the part that's hard for the partner, right? Because a lot of times partners will say, well, if you bring that up, like, I don't know, I'm making this up, right? But like, hey, the betraying partner probably didn't feel safe in the relationship. I can imagine if I'm a partner who was betrayed, I'd be like, well, what are you trying to say, that I didn't make them feel safe? Like, but really that inability to be safe in a relationship had been present for the betrayer his whole, or her whole
Were they
existence, more than
capable
likely.
of
Yeah.
having that security?
Yeah. Had they even known what that is?
Yeah, what does that actually look like? Does it look like being a people pleaser and agreeing over and over again to agreements that just didn't make sense to me, but because I want to stay in this relationship
At all costs,
at all costs?
even if I eviscerate myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is beautiful when there are those, relationships that come in and they're able to do that work is a lot of times the betrayed partner was like, oh, there were some things that I wasn't okay with. There were things that I'm working on and, I didn't realize I needed to work on.
Yeah.
What really actually makes me happy in a relationship? What do I want it to look like going forward? And so you start to see that progression towards we're going to build a relationship rather than two individuals kind of having an implicit understanding of what their relationship was supposed to look like.
Yeah. And that really brings up the idea of consent. Like, how can anybody give consent? Well, like, how could anybody really give consent if they're not able to differentiate and have that sense of authentic self present?
Yeah.
And then also now, for the betrayed partner, how can they give consent when they don't even know who or what necessarily the person is that is sitting across from them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you need to have like those boundaries and that differentiation all kind of on board before you can really start to negotiate consent, which brings up, because a lot of times partner or couples will be like, hey, yeah, we want to get back to, sexual interaction. At least I make up kind of in this, right, that I would want to be like telling them, no, now's not the time. Like we have to get through these other stages first before we can get to that, because you guys can't even really give consent because you don't even know what all of this is.
And that's, I think, where it's that important piece of bridging together healthy sexuality and these things that we've been working on exploring, right? Is how do we get away from those problematic behaviors and into healthy sexuality? And that's where you start to bridge that. Okay, differentiation. I was always quite perplexed that a lot of relationships don't talk about things they like. Like, it's like you just go and you have intimacy and everybody's comfortable, and it is messy and chaotic that way. And I mean, that's cool if you like it that way, but let's have an actual conversation about boundaries and consent and STI testing if you're just dating, or
Oh yeah, right.
and all
Even
those.
yeah, and that just brings up a whole nother conversation like that I imagine you have with coupleship, which is when they come in like, hey, did you guys get STI, STD screening? STI meaning sexually transmitted infection, STD, sexually transmitted disease, like testing.
Yeah.
And even dealing with like doctors, right, who are like, you're in a relationship, you don't need that. And it's like, well, actually,
Yeah.
I can only imagine, like, I'm just thinking about a partner. How hard would that be to come into your doctor's office and say, I need STI, STD screening, which is going to be horribly emotional to begin with. And
Yeah.
then the doctor saying, no, you don't. You're in a relationship. And then having to try to explain to the doctor, well, no, actually, my partner has been betraying me sexually for the last 15 years or something. Like, oh.
Yeah, that it's interesting because I work with different dynamics, so diverse relationships, and the stigma is there of having multiple partners, right? And even going in and saying, "Oh, I have multiple partners," and getting STI testing.
Yeah, it's like consensual monogamy.
Yes,
Right.
yeah,
Or
consensual
non-monogamy.
yeah. And so going in and having that conversation is stigma enough, right? But it's actually more common, normalized to come in and say, I've been betrayed, right? And now I need STI testing.
Yeah,
But it's
that's
still
true.
shameful.
Yeah.
It's still shameful on both the partners, behalves.
Yeah.
But it's heartbreaking for the partner to go in and say, oh, some of the more traumatic ones are the ones that go in with an STI, not knowing they have an STI and think they just have a skin rash, or, they're stressed out. And then a dermatologist going, oh, guess what?
That's
It's heartbreaking.
yeah.
And that's trauma that you have to work through. Another element of trauma.
And that's how some discoveries happen. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk
Yeah.
over you, but that's how some
Yeah.
discoveries actually happen.
Yeah. So definitely another barrier to repair.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the part of intimacy that is special, is repair. Repair is a huge part of intimacy. It's a huge part of, your relationship culture with your client, being able to make that repair when you've misstepped. When you misstep with your child, being able to repair, or your partner being able to repair. And betrayal is a huge, huge repair you have to make. There's lots of repairs.
Yeah.
And being able to be good at that is building that intimacy.
So you were talking about repair, and this idea of that repair doesn't just happen with betrayal, but it happens repeatedly throughout a relationship. And then you even said like repair between a therapist and their client. And it just like, I got this flood of like, oh yeah, because nobody's like perfect, right? Everybody makes mistakes.
Right.
Everybody makes whoopsies. Yes, a betrayal is a huge, right, nuclear bomb whoopsie, but what your therapist can make a whoopsie too, right? And so learning how to come back and say I'm sorry and take responsibility without like whipping yourself, right? Without shaming yourself. Yeah, that's hugely important.
Yeah. One of the things I teach my clients, whether it's an individual or a family or, a coupleship that comes in, is I'm going to go, yeah, see, that was a terrible first draft. It was a terrible first draft. We both know that was a terrible first draft. We all know that was a terrible first draft. We have a little laugh about it, go in with that soft humor. And then how can we have made that more validating? How could we have made that softer for our partner, rather than being like, yeah, terrible first draft. I basically verbally put all the red arrows and stuff on there, if you're older and had to go through first draft stuff. And I go, okay, so how can we do this? And I walk them through, okay, now you said, I understand exactly how you feel to be betrayed. I was like, oh, do we completely understand that? Do we completely understand how our partner's feeling?
Yeah.
And that's a no. I don't even know how the partner is exactly feeling. And so let's go back and talk about, that's your experience. And I'm sorry I contributed to that. And reassuring them that, moving forward, I'm going to honor your experience. But how do we move forward?
Yeah.
Right? Saving space for it, apologizing for it, owning it, that Thanos, right? Owning it.
Yeah.
And then going back to talking about it. And how do we do it better? The second draft or third draft or fourth draft.
Yeah, which brings up I think another wonderful point, which is that it's not one and done, right? Like people, like I know a lot of addicts or betrayers, however we want to term them, they will often be like, yeah, well, I said I was sorry. Like, why are you still mad? And it's like that, well, first of all, I'm sorry. That's a whole nother thing that we could talk about. But the whole idea of like, it's not like, okay, I made a repair. all
No.
done.
Yeah.
Let's go have pizza. Like, it doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I got this visual, and this is how you know you're a play therapist. I always get this like playful like lesson, and what is the monkey's name in Lion King? Rafiki? Is that what it
Oh,
is? And
yeah.
going back to him hitting Simba in the head. No, that's not right. No, that's not right, right? But instead of having someone hit you in the head with, a club, you have a partner where you can say, did I get that right? If I didn't get that right, how can I do better?
Yeah.
How can I honor you the way you need to be honored, right? But that, goes back into when we get to the point where we're doing post-traumatic repair and growth, both of you have things that you need in the relationship. And it's not just going to be one-sided. Intimacy is going to be reciprocal, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be both of us saying that doesn't work for me. Let's figure out how we can make this for both of us. Right?
Yeah. And that in itself, right, is a whole, in all likelihood, I imagine that whole thing is a very different interaction than what likely the coupleship ever had before, because there was always one person who, for reasons that were nobody's fault, unable to be that authentic self in the relationship.
Yeah.
You know.
And I would probably go out to say that were either of them able to be their authentic self. A lot of times we see that with betrayed partners, they have a lot of their own attachment wounds and a lot of beliefs and feelings about themselves that kind of contributed, I don't want to say contributed to the problem, but contributed to a relationship in a way that wasn't healthy for them either. And they get that opportunity when they're having rebuilding intimacy to have that corrective experience of this is how we should have done, relationship building in the first place. And here is how we're building it now.
Yeah, right. And I think the key there is right? Whereas
Like that team.
yeah, whereas before, and this isn't me shaming necessarily the betrayer, but before I imagine, I make up in my head, it was more the partner that was betrayed was building it, and the betrayer was just doing whatever they were kind of instructed,
Yeah.
or they interpreted the other partner needed, right? Unbeknownst to the betrayed partner, not their fault, not in any way.
Yeah, not at all faulting.
Yeah, not at all. Then the rebuilding of the new relationship, I imagine, for a betrayed partner might look very different in that. And this might sound strange. When I say they do less, I don't mean they do less as far as their own individual therapeutic work and even therapeutic work within the dynamics of the relationship and recovering from the wound. But I mean, they do less in the idea of like, stop, you tell me what you want. I need to hear what you actually want.
Yeah.
And kind of holding that space of like, I'm not going to dive in here and say what I want yet, because I'm going to reserve that until you start proving to me in a way, and this goes back to trust and safety, like proving to me in a way that you are going to be authentic now.
Yeah.
So kind of demanding the authenticity from the partner, from the betraying partner.
Not having all of the burden of building the relationship, themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. When we talk about, like, I always hear couples therapists talk about like trauma responses or shame and resentment and fear. And how do those things kind of show up in a relationship where there has been betrayal?
I mean, that's a whole podcast in its own.
Yeah.
We could talk about trauma responses and triggers,
Like,
and because that's not a just unique thing to betrayed partners. That's a human experience of,
yeah.
having triggers and having trauma responses and not fully trusting someone, right? But within the coupleship, it the beginning stages of acknowledging that this pain was caused and trying to make those repairs and making sure that we're on the right track to the same goal and doing that healing together is helpful, to acknowledge, like you go back to, AVR, acknowledge, validate, reassure, acknowledge.
So Carol Jurgensen
Yes.
Sheets,
Yeah.
Help Her Heal book.
Yeah. Which I have gone into 2.0 of, and
I guess
again,
she also wrote like Help Them Heal. So
help
for
them heal
coupleships
and
Help Her Heal,
helping couples heal.
Heal. Yeah, right. So she's
And so, a lot of AVR there, right? Her IRCOM model. When we get into 2.0 with some of our clients of, okay, acknowledging, validating, reassuring, not quite still working for them, right? And how do I compare it to Pokemon evolution. How do we take it from one Pokemon to the next, like to make it to where it's evolving with our relationship that's also evolving, right? So now we're going to have the real conversation of, okay, you got the basics of, acknowledge, validate, reassure down, but now let's go into 2.0 where it's, what do I need in that reassurance? What do I need in that validation, right? And then we get to where we're talking really about what the reciprocated needs are. I would love to AVR you, but I don't know exactly how you need me to AVR. So now you get to tell me exactly how that
what that looks like.
And so, Pokemon evolution. Again,
No way, right?
That play therapy spin of,
And then this actually brings up then what this idea of healthy intimacy, right? And that idea of, well, I mean, like so far, right, we've talked about kind of authenticity, being able to show up, and be your whole self, and how the betrayal kind of sabotages that for the betrayed partner, and how acknowledgement or discovery of the betrayal begins an awakening process for the betraying partner of like who they are and what their authentic self is and all of that. And then we talked about like once they discover that authentic self to have like differentiation, boundary, safe communication. And so these are all, it sounds like kind of the building blocks, safe repair. And then like, because the last question I was going to ask you is, and I think I'm kind of answering it right now, right, was what does healthy intimacy look like? And I guess it looks like all of those components, but what you were alluding to, I think just now, is it's not, because it's an evolutionary process, it's never really done.
Yeah, you always have to take a look at the relationship, right? And I think that's one of the things I work with couples the most is also looking at the difference between, intimacy and eroticism. Like, I love Emily Nagoski. Come Together and Come As You Are, great books. It's really fun to sit in her Come Together book and talk about sexual floor plans with clients. And my sexual floor plan to, being intimate or being in the playroom is not the same as somebody else's. Some partners have that playful way of getting to the lust area, and some people have, exploratory or acts of service, or whatever that floor plan looks like. Love making floor plans with couples because they have their hidden floorboards and everything else. They're like, yeah, this is like again another play. Emily did it in a way that was playful. Like, we've got this trap door. When my intimacy and my pleasure or desire sinks, I'm in a trap door and I'm over here, and it's terrible for me, right?
Yeah.
But intimacy isn't always about eroticism, right? It's being able to communicate with your partner. It's being able to be vulnerable and authentic and differentiate and still be able to say, well, yeah, I still like you and I still want to have, sexual intimacy with you and get into that erotic,
Space.
space.
I wonder, would it be accurate to deduce that erotic or eroticism space is kind of a byproduct of the intimacy and safety and authenticity and the ability to have relationship repair, like a byproduct of all of those things? And I'll say can be eroticism or sexual desire or arousal.
Can be the accelerators.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And lack of safety, the brake. Lack of connection, a brake, right?
Yeah.
And going back to what we started this conversation of is when somebody comes in and says, we want our intimacy back. Well, let's be curious. What is your intimacy?
Right.
So what is our intimacy floor plan? Because it doesn't look the same. And people confuse that, the betrayed partner is going safety and emotional intimacy and, safety, and the, betrayer may be asking the same things, but it may be like, I want healthy sexuality. And neither of them are wrong, but the way we approach it can't be the same if they have two different ideas of
What healthy is.
what healthy is and what intimacy is. And when you say intimacy, always defining what each partner means and how do we come together to bring that to the treatment plan.
Or to their relationship, right?
Oh yeah,
To
their culture.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And so,
I just want to say, thank you so much for doing this, for being vulnerable.
absolutely.
I think in the world of therapy, we need more of this.
Yeah.
If there was anything that you wanted to share, is there anything like that you would like to share that maybe we haven't had the opportunity to really talk about as we wrap up?
I just think that this work it's special work. It's important work. I see these behaviors as like a symptom of, attachment wounds and underdeveloped sexuality. And nobody, a lot of parents will go, nobody gave me a manual. And as many books as we have on healthy sexuality and attachment wounds, like really digging into the meat of the work, it goes back to that. Do we have individuals willing to work on the things they need to work on in order to benefit the relationship that they want, the culture that they want? Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Darren.